Today we're ranking Bible characters tier list style. S tier for the absolute legends, and D tier for, well, bad. Who's going to take the top spot? Stick around till the end to find out, because this is about to get chaotic. David might just be the most fearless king in history. I mean, think about it. He starts off as a shepherd, his main job being to babysit sheep that probably had the survival instincts of a rock. To keep things interesting, he's out here wrestling bears, taking down lions, and playing sheep therapist when they inevitably try to yeet themselves off cliffs. Then comes his big blow-up moment. His dad sends him on the ancient version of an Uber Eats run to deliver lunch to his brothers at the battlefield. He shows up, probably chucks the bread at his brothers, and then bam, who does he see? The Grandmaster Mojo Jojo himself, Goliath. The OG trash talker, out here dissing the God of Israel like he owns the place. Big mistake. David grabs his sling, lands a perfect headshot, and takes Goliath down like it's target practice. And a few years later, David's crowned king. David wasn't just a warrior, he was also a songwriter. The Psalms, absolute bangers. He was a military legend, brought the Ark of the Covenant back to Jerusalem, and was literally called a man after God's own heart. His resume was stacked. But here's where things get messy. While his army's out fighting wars, David's lounging in his massive palace. So one evening, he strolls onto his balcony, sees a beautiful Bathsheba with no clothes on. He leans in, and next thing you know, he's wiping Bathsheba's husband off the face of the earth and then marrying her. Yikes. Good thing he repented though. Like, seriously, that chapter could have ended a lot worse. Banger though. Ah, Jonah, the guy who got swallowed by a fish, or was it a whale? So here's the backstory. Jonah was a prophet, minding his own business, when God told him to go preach to the city of Nineveh. And Jonah, he said, nope, straight up ghosted the mission, and bought himself a one-way ticket in the opposite direction. But here's the thing though, you can't exactly outrun God. While Jonah's out at sea, God sends this massive storm. The sailors are freaking out, throwing prayers at every god they can think of, while Jonah's just chilling below deck like it's nap time. Eventually they figure out Jonah's the reason for the chaos, and throw him overboard. Yikes. Enter the fish, or whale, depending on how you see it. While inside, Jonah prays and decides to obey God after all. Cue the big finale. The fish spits him out and Jonah finally heads to Nineveh. Moral of the story, should have just listened to God in the first place. C tier. Noah, the man, the myth, the guy who literally floated through the apocalypse. He lived in the most chaotic time on Earth, like people were wilding out so hard that God basically hit the factory reset button. But Noah, he was the one righteous guy in the middle of it all. Now picture this. Noah wakes up one day and God slides into his DMs and tells him to build a boat. A big one. Smack dab in the middle of sunny weather. Everyone's walking by. Then comes the animal roundup. 2x2, male and female. And let's be real, this sounds like the worst job ever. Imagine trying to wrangle 2 giraffes, a pair of lions, and whatever mood zebras are in that day. And mosquitoes? Why, Noah? Humanity was literally rebooting, and you're out here giving mosquitoes a second chance? Anyway, after probably sweating through every tunic he owned, the ark is ready. And when the rain finally hits, 40 days and 40 nights of straight up waterworks, and humanity gets its second chance. Noah, he survives, becomes a legend, lives to the age of 950. Oh, and he gets blackout drunk at one point. Look, even heroes need a little downtime. Moral of the story, sometimes God's plans don't make sense, but you've just gotta trust the process. And maybe leave mosquitoes off the guest list next time. C tier. Daniel, the guy who went from being kidnapped into Babylon to vibing with Mufasa and Simba like it's a Disney movie. Daniel stood out because he could interpret dreams, basically the ancient version of a life coach. Fast forward, and some haters try to cancel him by banning prayer, but Daniel keeps praying anyway. He gets thrown into a den of hungry lions, and everyone expects him to become their midnight snack. By morning, Daniel's chilling with them. Moral of the story, trust God, and you might just walk out of a lion's den with a new squad. B tier. Joseph. The original golden child with a plotline straight out of a Netflix drama. So, Joseph was Jacob's favorite, and his dad didn't even try to hide it. He gifts Joseph this brand new Balenciaga coat. Naturally, Joseph flexes it, and his brothers, they're not amused. Then Joseph makes it worse by sharing a dream where they all bow to him. The brothers look at him, bet, and then sell him into slavery. Fast forward to Egypt, and Joseph is serving Potiphar, Pharaoh's top guard, basically the ancient version of the FBI director. Things are going okay until Potiphar's wife makes things very awkward by hitting on him. Joseph pulls the ultimate two-step exit, but she flips the script and falsely accuses him. In prison, Joseph makes the best of a bad situation and ends up running the joint. He interprets dreams for Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker. Spoiler, the baker doesn't make it, but the cupbearer gets out, and promptly forgets about Joseph for 2 years. Eventually, Pharaoh Pharaoh has a weird dream. And guess who's still the dream expert? Joseph. Pharaoh's so impressed, he promotes him to vice president of Egypt. When a famine hits, Joseph's grain-saving strategy makes Egypt the only place with food. Everyone starts showing up for help, including, you guessed it, Joseph's brothers. In a Godfather-level reveal, Joseph's like, "Surprise! It's me, your brother you sold." Cue tears, apologies, and a big family reunion with Jacob. Moral of the story? God's plan might have a few plot twists, but trust it, you might just go from slave to second in command. Legendary. All I'm going to say is God changed his name from Abram to Abraham. He had a midlife crisis. He had a child with his wife's servant and had another kid at the age of 100 years old. Yeah, anyways, he tried sacrificing his son. B tier. Paul was basically the Darth Vader of his time. Before his glow-up, Paul, then Saul, was a professional Christian hater. On the road to Damascus, God slaps him with blindness, and he has an encounter with Jesus. This obviously changes his life, and he converts to Christianity. He goes on to spread the gospel to multiple Gentile nations. Oh yeah, did I mention that he wrote 13 books of the New Testament, which are goated. He was also shipwrecked, beaten, jailed, and stoned. The mini-goat. Samson. The original gym bro with superhuman strength and the wildest story arc in the Bible. So here's the deal. When Samson was born, his parents made a vow. No scissors would ever touch his hair. Why? Because God blessed him with superhuman strength to smack down Israel's enemies, the Philistines. And when I say strong, I mean rip a lion in half with his bare hands strong. Dude was basically a walking Marvel superhero. But every hero has their kryptonite, and Samson's? Women. Specifically, Delilah, a femme fatale with a Philistine agenda. Samson's completely smitten, and the Philistines see their chance. They pay Delilah to find out the secret of his strength. After giving her fake answers, Samson finally caves when she pulls the ultimate guilt trip. He spills the truth. It's all in the hair. While Samson's snoozing, Delilah gives him the worst haircut of his life, and just like that, his strength is gone. The Philistines swoop in, imprison him, and even gouge out his eyes. But Samson's not done yet. At a Philistine celebration, with his hair growing back, Samson prays to God for one last power boost. God delivers, and Samson goes out in a blaze of glory, collapsing the entire building on himself and his enemies. Moral of the story? Don't ignore red flags in a relationship. S tier story. Esther saved an entire nation with her bravery. Need I say more? B tier. Job. The ultimate why me story. So Job was basically living his best life, wealthy, healthy, and everything he could ever ask for. Then, out of nowhere, God lets Satan test him. In the blink of an eye, Job loses everything. His wealth, his health, and his entire family. Talk about a really bad day. But here's the kicker. Job's friends come over, and instead of offering comfort, they start questioning why he's going through this. Basically, accusing him of being a sinner. But Job perseveres, not giving up on God. He goes through intense physical pain, emotional agony, and some seriously bad advice from his friends. But he still trusts God through it all. Eventually, God shows up, puts everything in perspective, and restores Job's life even better than before. Job ends up wealthier, healthier, and with a new family. Talk about a redemption arc. Never listen to your friends. B tier. Moses. The man who literally split the sea in half, but was super bad at public speaking. Moses started off as a baby in a basket floating down the Nile. Classic superhero origin story. He grew up in Pharaoh's palace, living the high life, but when he saw his people, the Israelites, suffering, he snapped and unalived an Egyptian guard. Moses bounces to the wilderness, spends 40 years as a shepherd, which is where God taps him on the shoulder, says, "You're up," and commissions him to free the Israelites. Moses then goes to Pharaoh, demands he let the Israelites go, and Pharaoh's like, "Hell no!" Cue the plagues, locusts, frogs, turning rivers into blood. After the plagues, Pharaoh finally lets them go. But Moses isn't done yet. He parts the Red Sea, like literally splits it in half so the Israelites can escape. It's one of the greatest miracles in history. And then, the man leads them through the desert for 40 years, deals with constant complaints, builds a golden calf. Can you imagine the migraines he had, and delivers the 10 Commandments? Moses never quite got to enter the promised land himself, but his legacy? Solid gold. Still a C tier though. Imagine being a teenage girl minding your business, scrolling on ancient TikTok, and an angel shows up out of nowhere, tells you you're carrying the Son of God, the Messiah, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, the one who was, is, and is to come, the very Savior of the world. And then, deuces. Yeah, that's Mary's life. She raised Jesus, watched him perform his miracles, and witnessed his ultimate sacrifice. In the green, All you should know about Solomon is that he's the son of King David, and one night God shows up to Solomon and says, "Ask for anything you want and I'll give it to you." And instead of asking for riches and fame, Solomon asked for wisdom. God was so impressed by this that he not only gave Solomon wisdom, but wealth and fame that was unheard of. Solomon was basically the most stripped out, swaggiest king you'd ever meet. Think Beyonce with Einstein's brain. People from all over the world came to marvel at his knowledge and wisdom. He wrote Proverbs, Goated, Ecclesiastes, Depressing, and the Songs of Solomon, romantic. Speaking of romance, he had 700 wives and 300 side chicks. Yeah. He tries to keep the peace by worshipping all their gods, which, spoiler alert, doesn't exactly end well for him. Talk about anticlimactic. Peter. He went from walking on water to denying Jesus 3 times. First of all, Peter was basically the Tupac of the disciples. He was a gangster. I can bet you 2 chickens and a rubber duck he always carried his sword around. Look how quickly he cut the ear off of a man who manhandled Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Besides the fact that he denied knowing Jesus like 3 times, Peter actually goes on to help spread the gospel and establish the first churches. So yeah, OG status. Okay, so Jacob was sneaky, like really sneaky. First, he straight up swindles his brother Esau out of his birthright with some stew. Then, he tricks his blind father Isaac into giving him the blessing meant for Esau by dressing up like him. This man was playing 3D chess while everyone else was stuck on checkers. But the man had guts. Jacob actually wrestled with God and refused to let go until God blessed him. He earned himself the name Israel that day. Now, the love story. Oh boy. Jacob worked 7 years to marry the love of his life, Rachel, only to wake up the next morning next to her sister, Leah. So he works another 7 years to finally get Rachel. He also found the 12 tribes through the 12 sons he had, in whom Joseph, the vice president, was one of them. So yeah, B tier, I guess. Elijah was the prophet. He challenges 450 prophets of Baal to a showdown, sets up an altar, prays, and boom, fire from heaven burns everything up. But then, out of nowhere, Queen Jezebel sends him a death threat, and Elijah's like, nah, and runs off into the wilderness. God gives him a pep talk, and Elijah later gets taken up to heaven in a chariot of fire, like something straight out of a Marvel movie. Banger. John the Baptist was the ultimate hype man for Jesus, but with a twist. This dude was living in the wilderness, wearing camel's hair and eating locusts like it was the latest health trend. People came from all over to hear him preach repentance and get baptized. Then Jesus shows up, and John's like, no, you should baptize me, but he does it anyway. People loved John, but some hated him so much they ended up throwing him in prison, and eventually he lost his head. Literally. But honestly, the dude was a legend. B tier. Do I even need to say more? He's literally the Son of God, came down from his perfect heavenly mansion to live as a human, and all out of pure, immense love for us. Like, he had everything up there. Glory, angels, no pain, no tears, but chose to step into our mess, get his hands dirty, and ultimately sacrifice himself for us. Talk about the ultimate flex of love. He didn't just die for us. He lived to show us how to love, heal, forgive, and transform lives. No one else comes close. His love is literally the blueprint for everything. You want to talk about a real king? Jesus is it. He reigns in a tier of his own. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe so I don't have to start a GoFundMe for my cat's gourmet tuna addiction. Also let me know down in the comment section what you'd like me to talk about next. Catch you in the next video.